We actually have a video. Maybe at some point I can share that with you, Paul, from one of our graduates who kind of shares that exact thing about what her life was like before, and before she came to Catalyst. So she had a difficult life, family situation growing up. She, however, was an athlete in high school and planning on college and all those kinds of things. And then she got involved with a man that kind of made her some promises that I think she basically kind of fell in love with him and made her promises that he didn't keep. And she, through that process, became addicted herself. And then, she was in such a vulnerable situation in terms of, then she was on the streets. Her life just changed so much, and she was vulnerable to just being exploited sexually, physically, and her addiction was such a factor in that. So I would say, she was sleeping wherever she could. She would sleep in a dumpster kind of thing or in a abandoned building. And when someone's in that situation, they're just really vulnerable and at risk for more exploitation, because there are people that'll come along and take advantage of that for their own gain sometimes. So I would say that sometimes, but not always, addiction is a part of that story. Sometimes it happens within the trafficking situation where the trafficker introduces that in order to cause that woman to become more dependent on him and maybe more compliant and things like that. And
continue. I'm so sorry.
No problem. And so I would say, if I was going to just say what are commonalities in that life, it would be the abuse at a young age, like I mentioned, and then usually a risky relationship that woman enters into. And she enters into it partly because she has some violence and abuse normalized in her own mind because of what she's experienced before. So that's one of the reasons that's a link in terms of higher percentage of people being trafficked that have been abused in their childhood years, So if she enters into that relationship, and maybe she's met this person through Facebook, that's one of the main things that are used for recruitment, Facebook, social media, that kind of thing, where someone's basically pretending to be a boyfriend and he's promising her great things. Maybe he's very charming. And she enters into that relationship thinking one thing and wanting security and wanting the things that she didn't maybe get at home. And he can manipulate that situation very quickly so that then he is, he's trafficking her. And he's making money from pictures that are being put on the internet, for example, or actively putting her into situations like an escort service or that kind of thing. He's the one that's in charge then. Usually he's then housing her and maybe some other women as well. And he is calling all the shots and threatening her, even though there's that charming boyfriend thing. There can be just a flip in that switch once it's obvious that what he's doing is trafficking her. And then she really is in a dangerous situation at that point. So that's kind of what it can look like, and that can last a short time. It can last 20 years, and it's just a very risky life then, where she's put in situations where she can be harmed easily. and he's not there. He's not protecting her. He's looking for that money that is coming into him, you know.
Wow. Thank you for painting that so clearly. That is eye-opening. And it's so frightening because the way you tell it, it sounds like anyone could actually fall for that.
Absolutely.
You know, you just find yourself in a particularly lonely situation. Someone who's good looking on Facebook or appears to be good looking reaches out to you, says nice things, makes these promises. You could fall for that. A young girl could fall for that big time.
Absolutely.
And then you could follow up with, let's meet up. Maybe takes you out to dinner. I don't know. A million things could happen. But does this happen in Bloomington, do you think?
Oh, it definitely does.
Really?
I'm sorry to say, yes.
This is pimping, is it not? I mean, I wish there was a different word. That word has developed a weird connotation. It's used in music. It's almost a positive thing sometimes. Like, you get girls, you're a pimp, It's a horrible term, though. You're a monster if you're a pimp.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
So that happens here.
It does. And, that can happen through a high school situation. It can happen. There can be a fellow high school student who is actually recruiting girls. It can be a girl that is doing that, not only men or boys. Sometimes a girl can be kind of used in that way. So if a recruiter or a pimp has a girl that he's already recruited, sometimes he can use one of them to kind of sort of build that friendship with another girl and then kind of bringing her along in that way. So it can look different ways, but definitely in our country, this is one of the most common ways that this happens, and can happen in high school, it can happen college, on a college campus or whatever. And I think what I would say is that this isn't something that we want to give people fear, but just awareness. And so that, girls, when they're in this kind of situation and they're meeting someone, that there's a lot of things that they need to verify and to not let themselves be in a situation where they're in danger or where they're isolated, that kind of